Look around you carefully. Watch how people behave, not what they say, but what they actually do. You'll notice something strange. The hardest working person in the office is not always the one who gets promoted. The kindest friend is not always the most respected. The most honest people are not always the most successful. Yet somehow, the quiet, calculating individuals, the ones who speak less, the ones who reveal nothing, always seem to move ahead. They rise faster. They gain influence more easily. They control situations without appearing dominant. And most people never understand why. Because they are playing life as a moral game, while others are playing it as a strategic game. 500 years ago, one man studied this reality without illusions. Niccolò Machiavelli. He was not interested in fairness. He was not interested in ethics. He was interested in one thing only: how power actually works in the real world. He watched kingdoms collapse overnight. He saw loyalty disappear when circumstances changed. He observed how quickly trust could turn into betrayal. And after years of studying human nature, he reached a conclusion that still makes people uncomfortable today. People are not guided by morality. They are guided by self-interest. And those who understand this truth quietly shape the world around them. If Machiavelli lived today, he would not complain about unfair bosses. He would not argue about toxic people. He would not chase validation on social media. He would move silently, observe everything, reveal nothing, and slowly position himself in a way where everyone depends on him without realizing how it happened. Tonight, you're going to see exactly how he would do it. Not in a medieval kingdom, but in modern life, at work, in relationships, in business, in social dynamics. Because power has not changed, only the battlefield has. And once you understand these laws, you will stop reacting emotionally to life. You will start observing strategically. And the moment that shift happens, your entire world changes. Imagine walking into a room full of people. There are loud personalities talking constantly. There are confident individuals trying to impress others. There are nervous people seeking approval. And then there is one person who says very little, who listens more than they speak, who reveals almost nothing about their thoughts. That person immediately creates psychological tension because humans are uncomfortable with uncertainty. We naturally try to categorize people. We want to know, is this person friendly? Is this person dangerous? Is this person weak? But when someone cannot be categorized, our mind becomes cautious. We hesitate around them. We watch our words carefully. We become more respectful without realizing why. This is why the most powerful individuals often appear calm and quiet. They understand a simple truth. The more predictable you are, the easier you are to control. When people know how you react to criticism, they can trigger you intentionally. When they understand your fears, they can exploit them. When they know your goals, they can sabotage them. But when you remain unreadable, you create a psychological shield. People cannot manipulate what they cannot understand. Machiavelli knew this deeply. He observed that rulers who revealed their true intentions too openly were the easiest to overthrow, but those who remained mysterious created fear and respect simultaneously. In modern life, this law applies everywhere. At work, the person who shares every plan with coworkers often finds their ideas stolen. In friendships, the person who reveals every insecurity often finds those insecurities used against them later. In relationships, the individual who is emotionally predictable often becomes easy to control. Being unreadable does not mean being cold. It means being selective. Selective about what you share. Selective about what you reveal. Selective about when you react. Because the moment people realize they cannot easily understand you, they begin treating you with caution. And caution is the first form of respect. Every human being has emotional triggers. Some people react strongly to criticism. Others react to rejection. Some cannot tolerate being ignored. Others become defensive when their authority is challenged. These emotional reactions are not just feelings, they are weaknesses, because they create predictable behavior, and predictable behavior can be controlled. Imagine a coworker who becomes angry whenever they are criticized. Over time, others learn this pattern. They can provoke that person intentionally. They can manipulate them by threatening their ego, and eventually, that person loses influence, not because they lack intelligence, but because they lack emotional control. Machiavelli observed this constantly in political leaders, rulers who acted impulsively, who allowed anger or pride to dictate decisions, were easily outmaneuvered, but leaders who remained calm under pressure, who responded slowly and strategically, maintained power much longer. Emotional control creates psychological superiority because when you do not react, others lose their ability to manipulate you. They may try to provoke you. They may attempt to create conflict. But if you remain calm, they become uncertain. And uncertainty weakens their position. In modern life, emotional discipline is one of the greatest forms of power. The person who stays calm during conflict automatically gains authority. The individual who does not react to insults creates psychological dominance, because silence in the face of provocation signals strength, and strength commands respect. Most people believe power comes from popularity. They think influence comes from being liked. But popularity is temporary. It can disappear overnight. Dependency is far more powerful. When people rely on you, they protect you, they support you, they hesitate to harm you, because losing you creates a problem for them. Machiavelli understood this clearly. He observed that rulers who made themselves indispensable were far harder to overthrow, because even their enemies depended on their leadership. In modern life, dependency appears in many forms. At work, the employee who holds unique knowledge cannot be easily replaced. In social groups, the person who connects others becomes central to the network. In relationships, the individual who provides emotional stability holds influence. Dependency creates invisible power because people rarely attack what they need. They protect it, they preserve it, they accommodate it. This is why strategic individuals focus not on being liked, but on being valuable. They develop skills that others lack. They become problem solvers. They create systems that depend on their presence. And over time, their influence becomes unavoidable. Because when removing someone causes disruption, that person becomes powerful. Most people believe the world operates on truth. They assume that if they work hard, behave honestly, and remain genuine, they will naturally be respected. But reality does not function that way. People do not respond to truth. They respond to perception. A confident person who knows very little often appears more capable than an intelligent person who doubts themselves. A calm speaker with authority in their voice can influence a room more than someone presenting perfect logic, because humans do not analyze deeply in social situations. They rely on emotional impressions. They observe posture. They interpret tone. They react to confidence. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. He saw rulers who were morally flawed, yet appeared noble in public. And because they controlled their image carefully, they maintained loyalty despite their actions. He concluded something deeply uncomfortable. People judge more with their eyes than with their minds. In modern life, perception shapes opportunity everywhere. At work, the employee who appears confident is often trusted with leadership roles. In social settings, the person who carries themselves with composure is treated with respect. Even in digital spaces, individuals who control their image carefully influence thousands without revealing their true personality. This does not mean becoming dishonest. It means understanding that presentation is power. How you appear determines how others respond, and those who master perception quietly control outcomes. Most people feel uncomfortable with silence. When conversations pause, they rush to fill the gap. They reveal unnecessary information. They speak impulsively. They expose emotions they did not intend to share. But strategic individuals understand something powerful. Silence is not emptiness. It is pressure. When you remain silent during negotiation, the other person often speaks more. They reveal their priorities. They disclose their fears. They provide information they would otherwise protect. When you stay calm during conflict, the other person feels psychological discomfort. They may escalate emotionally, while you maintain composure. And in that contrast, you gain dominance. Machiavelli saw this dynamic repeatedly in political discussions. Leaders who spoke excessively often revealed their strategies prematurely, but those who listened quietly learned everything they needed before acting. In modern life, silence is often misunderstood. People interpret quietness as weakness, but true silence is intentional. It is controlled. It is strategic observation. The person who speaks less often understands more because they are not focused on expressing themselves. They are focused on studying others. And information is the foundation of influence. Open displays of power create resistance. When someone dominates aggressively, others naturally feel threatened. They begin forming alliances against that person. They prepare defensive strategies because visible power triggers opposition. Invisible power does the opposite. It operates quietly. It influences without attracting attention. Machiavelli observed that rulers who ruled with overt force often faced rebellion, but those who shaped events indirectly maintained control far longer. In modern life, invisible power appears everywhere. In organizations, the most influential individuals are not always in leadership positions. Often, they are the quiet advisors, the network connectors, the decision influencers behind the scenes. They do not announce authority. They shape outcomes subtly. Because when people do not perceive control, they do not resist it. True power often works this way. It moves silently. It positions strategically, and by the time others recognize it, the structure is already established. Before you enter a room, your reputation arrives first. It shapes expectations. It influences how people interpret your behavior. If you are known as reliable, mistakes are forgiven easily. If you are known as unreliable, even small errors become significant. Machiavelli observed that rulers who maintained strong reputations were able to command loyalty without constant force, because reputation creates assumptions. It simplifies decision-making for others. They do not analyze you deeply. They rely on the narrative they already believe. In modern life, reputation functions as invisible armor. It protects opportunities. It reduces resistance. It creates automatic credibility. But once damaged, it is difficult to repair, because negative narratives spread quickly, and people remember emotional impressions more than facts. Strategic individuals guard their reputation carefully. They avoid unnecessary conflicts. They control public perception. They ensure their actions reinforce the story they want others to believe. Because reputation is not just protection, it is leverage. When something is always available, it loses significance. When it becomes rare, its value increases immediately. This principle applies not only to material resources, but to human presence. People who are constantly accessible often become taken for granted. Their time is undervalued. Their attention is expected. But individuals who manage their availability strategically create psychological importance. Their presence feels valuable. Their attention feels earned. Machiavelli recognized this dynamic in political alliances. Leaders who distributed favors too easily lost influence, but those who offered benefits selectively maintained control, because scarcity generates desire. It creates anticipation. It increases perceived worth. In modern relationships, this principle operates constantly. The person who maintains boundaries is often respected more. The individual who does not overextend themselves is valued more highly, because scarcity signals importance, and importance attracts attention. Many individuals believe strength means confronting every challenge. They react to criticism immediately. They engage in unnecessary arguments. They defend themselves constantly. But strategic thinkers understand something different. Not every battle deserves attention. Machiavelli observed that wise rulers avoided minor conflicts. They conserved energy for significant threats, because constant engagement drains resources. It reduces focus. It weakens long-term strategy. In modern life, distractions are everywhere. Social conflicts, workplace politics, personal disagreements. Engaging in all of them creates exhaustion, but selective engagement creates power. Because when you respond only to meaningful situations, your actions carry greater weight, and your energy remains focused on what truly matters. Humans instinctively gravitate towards strength, not necessarily physical strength, but psychological strength. Calmness under pressure signals stability. Emotional control signals reliability. Confidence signals leadership. Machiavelli observed that rulers who appeared strong maintained loyalty even during crises, because people seek security. They follow those who seem capable of handling uncertainty. In modern life, this principle shapes leadership everywhere. The person who remains composed during stressful situations naturally gains authority. The individual who avoids emotional instability becomes trusted. Strength attracts influence automatically because people feel safer around it. Human psychology is not driven by logic. It is driven by emotion. And among all emotions, one is stronger than almost any other: fear of loss. People often claim they value love, but in reality, they protect what they fear losing. When something is guaranteed, it becomes invisible. When something feels uncertain, it becomes precious. Machiavelli observed this in political alliances. Rulers who were always forgiving, who never enforced consequences, lost respect quickly because others felt safe challenging them. But leaders who established clear boundaries, who demonstrated they could withdraw support, maintained authority, not because they were cruel, but because they created psychological consequence. In modern life, this law appears everywhere. At work, the employee who never sets boundaries often receives less respect. In friendships, the person who tolerates everything is often taken for granted. In relationships, the individual who never walks away loses influence because respect grows from perceived risk. When people believe they can lose you, they invest more effort, they treat you more carefully, they value your presence more deeply. Fear of loss is not about intimidation. It is about self-respect. It is about demonstrating that your value is not negotiable. In ancient times, power came from armies. In modern times, it comes from information. Knowing what others do not know creates advantage. Revealing less than others expect creates protection. Machiavelli understood this deeply. He studied how rulers gathered intelligence constantly. They observed allies and enemies alike. They collected knowledge before making decisions. Because information creates foresight, and foresight creates control. In modern life, this principle shapes influence everywhere. The person who listens more than they speak learns more than others. The individual who observes patterns carefully anticipates outcomes earlier. Those who expose all their plans openly lose strategic flexibility because once others know your intentions, they can counter them. Information imbalance creates power imbalance. The one who knows more moves with confidence. The one who reveals less remains protected. Predictable people are easy to manage. Their behavior can be anticipated. Their reactions can be calculated. Their decisions can be influenced. But unpredictable individuals create uncertainty, and uncertainty creates caution. Machiavelli observed that leaders who behaved consistently were often outmaneuvered, but those who occasionally acted unexpectedly maintained psychological dominance. Because unpredictability forces others to hesitate. They cannot plan effectively. They cannot manipulate confidently. In modern life, unpredictability functions as a strategic shield. It prevents others from controlling your behavior. It discourages exploitation. It creates psychological distance. This does not mean acting irrationally. It means avoiding rigid patterns, remaining flexible, and ensuring others never feel completely certain about your next move. Because uncertainty limits opposition. One of Machiavelli's most controversial observations was also one of the most accurate. People are primarily motivated by self-interest, not morality, not loyalty, not fairness, self-interest. This does not mean people are inherently malicious. It means they prioritize personal benefit. Alliances shift when incentives change. Friendships weaken when interests diverge. Support disappears when costs increase. Understanding this truth is essential because it removes illusions. Strategic individuals do not assume loyalty blindly. They understand motivations. They analyze incentives. They observe patterns of behavior, not promises, because promises reflect intentions, but actions reveal priorities. When you understand self-interest, you stop taking betrayal personally. You begin anticipating it strategically. And anticipation creates protection. Humans naturally organize themselves into hierarchies in every workplace, every social group, every community. Invisible structures of influence emerge. Some individuals lead conversations, others follow. Some command attention effortlessly, others struggle to be heard. Machiavelli observed this dynamic constantly in political courts. He saw how influence flowed through networks, not always through official titles. Understanding hierarchy allows strategic positioning. Because influence rarely comes from confrontation, it comes from alignment. Building relationships with key figures, supporting powerful allies, positioning yourself near sources of authority. In modern life, hierarchy awareness creates advantage because those who understand social structures navigate them effectively, while those who ignore them often remain marginalized. Trust is not built through promises. It is built through patterns. When behavior remains consistent over time, others begin relying on it. Machiavelli saw that rulers who maintained predictable strength created stability, even if they were feared. Consistency creates psychological comfort. It reduces uncertainty. It increases reliability. In modern life, consistency shapes reputation. The person who remains calm under stress becomes trusted. The individual who fulfills commitments regularly becomes respected because predictable reliability is perceived as strength. Constant presence reduces significance. Strategic absence increases value. Machiavelli observed that leaders who appeared everywhere constantly became ordinary, but those who managed visibility carefully maintained mystique. Absence creates curiosity. It increases anticipation. It prevents overexposure. In modern life, this principle applies socially and professionally. The person who is always available often becomes overlooked, but the individual who appears selectively commands attention because scarcity creates psychological weight. Emotional volatility creates vulnerability. Calmness creates authority. Machiavelli observed that rulers who remained composed during crises maintained loyalty because stability reassures others. In modern life, emotional stability signals leadership. The person who handles stress calmly is trusted with responsibility because others feel secure around them. Stability attracts influence naturally. Most people misunderstand power. They imagine it as loud, aggressive, dominant, but real power is often silent. Machiavelli observed that rulers who displayed power constantly created resistance, but those who exercised control subtly maintained influence longer. Quiet power does not seek attention. It does not announce itself. It operates through presence, through calm authority, through strategic positioning. In modern life, quiet power appears everywhere. The calm leader who speaks rarely often commands the most attention. The individual who remains composed in chaotic situations naturally becomes the center of stability, because silence combined with confidence signals control, and control creates respect. Rigid individuals break under pressure. Flexible individuals survive. Machiavelli observed that rulers who adapted quickly to changing circumstances maintained power even during crises, but those who resisted change lost influence rapidly. In modern life, adaptability determines success. Situations evolve constantly. Economic shifts, social dynamics, technological changes. Those who cling to fixed strategies struggle to remain relevant, but those who adjust intelligently navigate challenges effectively. Adaptability is not weakness, it is strategic evolution. All previous laws connect to one central principle: understanding human nature. Machiavelli spent his life studying patterns of behavior. He recognized that emotions often override logic, that self-interest guides decisions, that fear and desire shape loyalty. In modern life, understanding human psychology creates unmatched advantage. It allows you to anticipate reactions, to navigate social dynamics, to position yourself effectively. Because when you understand how people think, you understand how they act. And when you understand how they act, you understand how outcomes unfold. Look around you once more. The world has not changed as much as we believe. People still seek power, still protect their interests, still respond emotionally, still follow strength. But most individuals move through life unconsciously. They react impulsively. They trust blindly. They assume fairness where strategy exists. Machiavelli saw through these illusions centuries ago. He understood that power is not about domination. It is about awareness. It is about observing reality without denial. It is about recognizing patterns others ignore. Because once you see these dynamics clearly, you stop feeling confused by human behavior. You stop taking every action personally. You begin understanding motivations. And understanding creates control. Not control over others, but control over yourself, your reactions, your decisions, your direction. And this is the greatest form of power, because when you master your own mind, you become impossible to manipulate. So remember this: the most dangerous person in any room is not the strongest, not the loudest, not the most aggressive. It is the one who understands people better than people understand themselves, because knowledge of human nature is the foundation of influence. And once you begin seeing the world through this lens, you no longer move blindly. You move strategically, quietly, deliberately, like Machiavelli would.